Welcome back. This project is basically a gift from me to you. This is a wrapping paper slicer, and the way this works is you take your roll of wrapping paper and then you stretch out the amount of paper you need. Then you slide this along the roll of wrapping paper. The razor blade that you see listed here, shown here, will slice the paper, and it helps you keep your cuts straight. There is a little slot that is extruded with removal right here that allows the blade to slide in, and then you slide the blade all the way down to the final resting spot, which is a slot here that you can embed the blade in. That helps hold the blade straight so it doesn't tilt and cause paper to rip. Although it's still going to, but it minimizes it. This is the number 11 blade that is used in this. Slide it over a little bit so you can read. And you can see those are the dimensions. I would still measure it myself, which I did just to be sure, because if you don't buy an X-Acto brand, which apparently I did not, I bought an Ace Hardware version, it may be slightly different. It wasn't by much. Sometimes they do that in order to avoid patent trouble. Okay, so now let's draft this thing. We'll begin with a 2D sketch, and we will use this plane, the XZ plane, which typically I call the build plate. I'm going to rotate it so top is upright. I want the x-axis to be visible so that we can draw from it. And then we're going to use, instead of the rectangle drawing tool, we're going to use the slot center point arc way down here. And what that will do for us, we've already discussed this very early in the semester, but as a reminder, what it will do for us is basically this. So what we'll do is we'll first start out in the center dot here. Then we'll extend out about 30 millimeters to this dot. That'll be our second click. Then we'll start drawing our circle. Till we come up shy about here somewhere. That'll be our last click. And then it will want us to grow or shrink this dimension right here, the thickness of it. And at that point, we want it to be about 3 millimeters. To give you an expanded view of this, right here is about our 3 millimeters. And then after we do that, we're going to assume that this is already locked in place. Then we want to put a final dimension from this dot here to this dot here of 8.7 millimeters, which is right here. Alright, so let's do that. So we'll start with the center point arc slot drawing tool. We'll click right here in the center, that's our first one. We'll go at about 30. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. You may have to zoom out just to get it to fit. So somewhere in there is around 30. And then we'll start drawing it around. I'm going to come up shy about there somewhere. Maybe there someplace. And then I'm just going to use the wheel mouse to zoom in a little bit So I can kind of get close to the 3 millimeter mark, which is there. Okay, that's pretty close to 3 millimeters. Now, we need to add our dimensions. So, let's dimension this thing. Looks like that started right on the line perfectly, so that's good. I think the first dimension I want to do is this one right here, from here to here. And we'll change that to 8.7. Okay, that brought it in just a little. That should be 8.7. Yep, 8.7. There's a lot going on in this. So, okay. The next one we want is the overall dimension from this center out to that point there. Now this is a little tricky one to do because it wants to do that as opposed to straight across. A lot of times you can just go click on this dot again and it should bring it out. Apparently it did not. Nope. We'll try that. Okay, we'll just escape, try it again. We'll start with that dot this time and try this one second. And then we'll go back to this dot and click it one more time, and nope, that gave us an angle. Hit escape, dimension, start at the center this time, go to the end, and what if I click the end one a second time and a third time? Nope, this locked in a dimension I totally don't want. Alright, well there is one way we can do this. What if we did it this way? On this one, to this one. There's our answer. There. That is the easy way. Now, when I drafted this, I was able to do it this way. But to be honest with you, this is easier because it's already straight. So that'll work. I would do it that way. Now I would just, okay, escape so that we're out of the dimension tool. So I can pull this down a little bit. Get it out of the way. Last dimension is this one right here. I want the 3 millimeters. So from there to there, pull it down a little bit, and then we'll change it to 3. Okay, pretty close. I think we have a winner. And the escape, of course, turn off the dimension command up there. We can slide this back up here if you want. I think it looks better out of the way a little bit. Alright, so that starts our base. We'll finish our sketch, zoom it out a little bit, and now we will do an extrude. Okay, checking back on our directions, it looks like the extrusion shall be 75 millimeters. So, let's go back to our sketch. I think I'm going to rotate it just one, like that. Okay. And now let's hit extrude. Of course it knew that was the shape we wanted. It's the only shape we have sketched. 10 is not enough. We want 75 millimeters. Alright, 75 millimeters it is. We'll OK it. We'll check and make sure that that's right. Yes, it is. 75 millimeters. Okay. Now it is extruded 75 millimeters. So, for the next sketch that we will do, we will draw 2 circles. The center out to this one, and then the center again out to this one. Notice there's no dimensions on this. We don't need them because we're going to snap them to the existing circles. Well, the two semicircle lines, or almost circle lines, that are there. We'll just use that as our reference. So let's do that. We'll go over here to our sketch, and there's two ways you can do this. I'm going to go ahead and do it this way. What I want to do is zoom in so I can isolate that edge right there. That's going to be our plane that we're going to draw on. And now we will start sketching 2D Sketch on it. And we'll just zoom out a little bit. Easiest way to do it is project geometry. We'll project that line right there and that round line right there. That gives us two things to snap to. So now if we go over to circle, start in the center, and snap it to the first one, and we still have circle selected, so we can start in the middle, snap it to the second one. Right there is snapped right there. That has filled that in. So we'll finish that sketch. What that has done for us is that has given us another surface to extrude from. So you can see here the goal is to extrude a solid cylindrical shape 25 millimeters from our base, working this way. That's a little better. Okay, so let's do that. We have already got this selected here. We'll hit extrude. Select profile. Right there. And that profile also became the sketch plane. But 75 millimeters sounds familiar. That's what we did earlier. We want it to be 25 millimeters this time. So we'll OK that, and look at that. Now we have a base to our slicer. And it should look something like this. Very good. So the next thing we need to accomplish is to put a little slot in the, well, slot. We need to put a slot in there for the razor blade to slide down into the base. And it needs to be a slot in order for the razor blade point not to be sticking out and catching on things. It needs to be kind of embedded in this shape. So here's what we're going to create next, is this slot right here. And we will basically draw a rectangle from the two center points and run it down to this base right here. Here is the dimension that we're going to use. It is 0.64 millimeters. 0.64 millimeters. Pretty small. But so is the razor blade in thickness. That is actually the thickness of the razor blade. And the dimension going side to side is not important, because we're going to use the center dots right here and right here that are centers to these curves right here, to the radius of those curves. So just recycle that. Okay, let's go ahead and draw that up. And this is the, so we'll zoom in quite a bit. In fact, we'll turn it top so that we're straight looking at it. And what we want to do is start with this top surface and click on Sketch, zoom out because it just took us away, zoom in nice and close, That's pretty close. Go to Project Geometry. And let's project that geometry right there. And what that did is it gave us the center dots. Right there and right there. So what we want to do, now that we've projected these dots from the previous sketch, is we want to use a 3-point center rectangle. Now the thing about this one is you can see you have to start in the center, work your way to one of the dots, and then the third click is the width. So what we need to do is find the center between this dot and this dot. And one way to do that is to draw a line that is a construction line. So we will put a construction line in right from this dot to that dot, and then I'm going to, while still in construction, put a point, and if I just follow along this line very carefully to about the middle, that yellow dot should change to a green right there, and that's where I want it. That green represents the center. So now be sure to turn off construction. And we can go now to our 3-point center rectangle. We'll choose it. We are not in construction. Starting at the center, work our way to one of the dots there. Click it. And then come out. Should be 0.62. That's pretty close. We'll click it there. Now we will dimension that side dimension, which is by touching it, coming out. Oh, have to do it again. Touch it again. Click, come out. And that locked it in. We're going to zoom right in. We're going to change that to 0.62. I don't even think I could hardly see it move. It shrank just a teeny tiny bit. 0.62, which is 0.64. That's easy enough to fix. 0.64. There, I saw it move that time. 0.64. And that is going to be the slot. We're going to finish our sketch. And it'll zoom out a little bit. And I'm even going to rotate it. We want to run that down and remove material until we hit that base right there. Okay, so let's do that. Let us hit extrude. The profile we want to select is that one right there. Be careful. It wants to give you a choice between that and that. And we want, this does nothing for us. This does everything for us. So we selected that. And in usual fashion, it extrudes away. Reverse the direction. Now you can see it's starting to cut in. And we want it to go to that right there. And then OK it. And that has run the slot down for the razor blade. But as you recall, the razor blade has a base to it, which is a little narrower than the width of the blade. And that slot will have to go in here. So let's work on that next. So this slot is slightly different. This slot right here is slightly different than the slot up here. And the difference is this one is slightly wider and narrower. Wider this way, narrower this way. And here is by how much. 5.9 and 0.7. That's really close to the original dimensions. I think they're just slightly rounded up, ever so slightly. I think this one was 0.64, and 0.7 made it a little easier to slide it in, and believe me, it's not easy. After a couple test runs, this is what I came up with. It seems to work pretty well, especially with ABS plastic, which tends to shrink a little when it cools. Okay, so let's draft this thing up. Okay, so we need to use this as our drawing surface. So we'll choose that. That'll be our plane. And we'll go into 2D Sketch. And then we will move it back so we can see it. And this is the same thing that we're going to have to do. We're going to have to go and draw ourselves a center point. So a line, construction line. Oh, let's project the geometry again. There we go. Projecting geometry. And what we will do then is now we will draw our construction line between here and here. Okay, and the main reason for that is so we can get a center point. Somewhere along this line is the middle, right there. So we'll lock it in. Okay, turn off construction. Same thing, same 3-point center rectangle with no construction. Starting here, coming out, following that line, somewhere just shy, and then stretch it out. Okay, now let's dimension it. This dimension, we'll click on it again. Yeah, I don't care if it goes that way. Sure. That one was 0.7. Okay, now this one, we'll click it again, come up here. This one should be 5.9. Okay.
What can help you take advantage of
Interesting how it just kind of doesn't line up perfectly center on that.
Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states.
Well, let's constrain it. So we can constrain it by making sure construction's off, finding a point, and following this line right here. There's a center dot right there. So we've just put a dot on this line, which means it's the middle of it. And we'll go to our constraint and take that dot, constrain it to that line, lines right up. There, that's in case you don't get it perfect. Like, you probably will have it perfect when you do this, as long as you get it on that line. But if you miss, like I apparently did, you can use the constraint tools and constrain it right to it, and that squares it up. You'll want that to be square like that because the blade will have to bend otherwise to fit in there. So we'll finish that sketch. So the next question is how deep do we extrude it for the base of the razor blade to go in? The answer in this case, we're going to use 8mm. We're going to extrude our new rectangle 8mm down. Like that. So let's go ahead and extrude it. We'll start with extrude, and it looks like it chose it for us already. That's interesting. If it did not, you will need to. In fact, I'm going to assume, let's not assume that. Let's manually choose it. Now you can do it this way, or you can go over to Sketch here. If you click that a second time, a lot of times you can just click on it here. Let's go with here. And reverse the direction. And change it from 25 to 8. 8mm. And OK it. And now we have a little pocket for the base of that razor blade to go into when you insert the razor blade. And believe it or not, that is this entire project. One important tip I want to give you, if you do decide to build this thing and go to insert one of these razor blades, the easiest way to do it is to, of course, start sliding the blade in, but take advantage of this slot right here. You can stick a small screwdriver in the slot and use the metal to push that down to slide it through the shaft. That way you're not putting your fingers on that sharp edge. Let the small screwdriver, like a glasses screwdriver or a hobbyist screwdriver, something really small that'll fit in that slot right here, and then just run it right down until it clicks into the base. And you may have to twist it this way or this way to get it to line up in that slot, or simply push it one way or the other. But once it goes in that slot, it stays pretty sturdy. So I just wanted to advise you on that, because otherwise you can cut yourself pretty well on these things. They are sharp. Okay, enjoy this project.